Okay, so as Pardo from Pardo Effects, please subscribe if you find these market overviews useful. I'll be doing them every week. And basically, we try as much as we can to not look at fundamentals, but actually look at just what the price is doing and use that to sort of steer us into finding the greatest setups for the week coming and where we might trade in the most sensible places. So we're looking at the Aussie dollar now, and it's going to be similar to the Kiwi dollar. But AUD New Zealand, as you probably know, can dictate what the preference is in terms of going long or short against the Aussie or the New Zealand dollar. And what all New Zealand's doing, it's sort of wedged between 1.1 emotional level and the 500 EMA and the 17 EMA on the 4 hour pushing price down, and therefore the bias is short because this line that's above this point of interest is arguably the strongest level of support resistance on the entire chart. So the bias is down, which would mean a weaker Aussie and a stronger New Zealand dollar, which sort of doesn't pair up with what I've seen sort of across the New Zealand and Aussie pairs. So it'll be interesting to see what finds out, what happens. But this looks short. This consolidation looks like short consolidation. However, there's only so many times you can test the upper resistance before it finally breaks through, and many more times it will likely push back up. But you can see how much it's struggling to push through this area. So the bias is short with being wary of 1.1, which would mean an overview of a weaker Aussie and a stronger New Zealand dollar. So with that in mind, AUD yen, okay, again, similar to the New Zealand dollar, it's been in an area of relatively consistent ranging with a strong demand. The point hit last week was the same point hit back in early December. Therefore, how the reaction there can dictate how you look at price going forwards. Because if it was just going to break straight through, you'd sort of expect it to push and then flag underneath. But what it did is it rejected and then flagged sort of above that demand area. So, if you look on the 1 hour, you've got a rejection, you've got a retest in above the 96 emotional level, similar to what happened last time price came here, and it pushed up from there. And it's coming back again, but again, you can see potential retest on top of the hour 17 EMA there. So the bias is long, okay, with the yen being a fairly safe haven. It's a difficult long to take given what's happening in the world, but that is the overview going forwards. For now, it looks long. So I'll stick with that. It's within the range. We can trade it up if we want. GA is really not looking really nasty in terms of confirmation to do anything. Pound New Zealand is a much stronger trade than I would suggest this is at the moment. Although it is just hovering underneath that emotional level, 2, big round number 2. So that alone is enough to say, well, potentially this is going to go short. And that's what the bias will be, not because we're looking for swings, but because this supply here, this emotional level, and sort of the extreme peak here is sort of dictating that because it's below those areas, we should be looking short on it. The problem with it is there's not much peak symmetry. So you have this here, which is great. It's an ultimate area of supply, but sort of on the shorter time frames, it doesn't inspire confidence in terms of what's actually going to happen with price. And if anything, you can say, well, it's rejected from the emotional level, and potentially it's just going to retest here and go up, or it's going to drop a bit lower and go up. But at any of these points, it doesn't look nice from a price action perspective. So it's probably one that I'll stay away from. But the bias has to be short based on this reaction from the supply, even if it's just to retest to go long, similar to GN. AUD Swiss franc is not a trade, a pair that I ever really trade, to be honest. So unless I see something really special on it, I generally keep out. But you do see this ultimate level of demand here, really, really strong over the last couple of years. So that's worth bearing in mind as price comes to it. That being said, the price as it is, it looks like it was flagging out, broke and touched the trend line and closed below the EMA 17 on the daily. So the outlook's short, but it'll be interesting to see how it reacts at this demand point of 0.561. And I don't really need to say much more about it now. The Aussie US dollar, I think, looks more bullish than the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar, and the reason being, when the New Zealand dollar hasn't really touched its peak demand point, and on the Aussie, you could potentially say, it already has. That level of 62 has been rejected a few times, pushed up, come back down to test it. Not the best daily candle because it was crazy on Friday, but if I was expecting the New Zealand dollar to push lower, um, and the New Zealand dollar looked weaker than the Aussie, sorry, it looks stronger than the Aussie, I'd expect this to come down as well, but that might be overthinking it. Your next point on this, if it does come down, is really 5.9. Yeah, so you're looking at another 300 pips lower down there. Um, but at the moment, based on this area being so strong, I'm sticking bullish. I'm not going to look for a trade up unless you get a decent reversal and then sort of test back onto one of the EMAs, maybe at 62, to go long again. And it's essentially a range trade at that point. Okay, what's next? AUD CAD, very similar to New Zealand CAD, but not as strong. However, using the EMA 17 on the daily, the easiest way to track this is on the daily chart because it's always so messy. On anything other than that, you can see this nice uptrend here, which we had a few opportunities to get in, but didn't. Possibly because the price action is just so dodgy on this pair. It's not a pair I like trading, but if you did and you wanted, let's track it on the daily, well, a break above and a test of the daily and a positive reaction would suggest that the bias is long. And you can possibly say that about most CAD pairs. The loonie looks very, very weak still. And with the tariffs coming in, well, it might be a fairly extensive moves up on some of the stronger currencies at the moment. And then finally, we've got Euro AUD. It's a really strange week last week. This pair is never straightforward, but it does respect trends fairly well in terms of trend lines and stuff. What we've got to decipher is what this top is. Is it a retest to go long? Is it, what is it? And it's difficult to say because to me, it looks like a flag back to the top. So it looks like the culmination of this whole consolidation flag to the top. And if I expected it to go a little bit higher, so I messed up a trade in here, which was long, I expected it to reach higher, missed out a fair bit of profit. Okay, it looks like sort of almost a Frankenstein head and shoulders, although is the trend long enough to dictate it being a head and shoulders? I'm not so sure. But watch out if you go in short. Now, this 1.67 is a really strong level, and that's where it is. However, peak symmetry could poke its nose up, throw up a high there, come down from that point. It could do that in conjunction with this sort of little trend line going up and it to come down from there. It could be a retest to go long from here. Essentially, we don't know. So you can't really trade it here, or you possibly shouldn't trade it here, even though it's quite a strong setup. But that's based on we need direction. Yeah, we need direction. The strongest place to trade short, but the riskiest as well, is pretty much exactly where it is. But the safest place to trade short is below this point, like that. Okay, the safest place to go long is a retest of 1.67. Being conscious of this peak on the left potentially being an area of rejection to go short. Very interesting pattern this is. And that's it for the Aussie. So again, thanks. If you found the overview useful, then throw me a subscribe and possibly see you on the Discord. Cheers, guys.